Boom. We are back at it again, folks. We are the Wrasslin for Life Network. Happy WrestleMania week. Happy WrestleMania weekend. Happy WrestleMania day, Saturday, Sunday. You know we got you covered for that. But right now we're here to talk some XFL. Week 6 is in the books. We're already past the halfway point of the season. But we've got you covered, folks, for your XFL coverage. So let's get into it. Week 6, your Week 6 XFL recap starts right now. And hello again. Like I said, we are the Wrasslin for Life Network. I am Big Nick. I'll be taking you through your Week 6 recap of XFL. And like I said earlier, happy WrestleMania weekend, WrestleMania day. I will let you know, even though this should be going out on a Saturday, right before we're here live for the marathon stream for WrestleMania, because you already know we got you covered for that. But I will let you know that I am recording this on a Friday, because I know that there's a game for Week 7 later today. So when we get to that, y'all can make fun of me if I'm wrong on my predictions. But let's get right into it, like I said, with Week 6 in the XFL. And we had one hell of a matchup that I can't wait to get to. But we had Seattle 26 over Orlando 19. So once again, the Orlando Guardians are still winless. And the Seattle Sea Dragons still moving up. Didn't have the greatest game, but still moving up. And then we've got San Antonio versus Arlington. San Antonio picks up the dub 15-9. And it's weird because this was a rematch from last week. And the result, I feel, was almost the same score, just flipped. So again, both those teams just seem to be kind of middling. And we've got, well, I forgot to add the game of the week that I had in here. Yes, we've got St. Louis. I'll pull that in right now. But we had St. Louis beating KJ's Vegas Vipers 29-6, just laying a whooping on the Vegas Vipers there. Again, still, St. Louis finally starting to come around, starting to really hit their stride back again after, they took a couple L's there. But then, and I kind of teased it a bit, but my game of the week, I think game of the season, I think potentially still could be, because the two conferences, a championship game for the XFL this year. The DC Defenders topple the Houston Roughnecks 37-26 to remain still the only undefeated team in the XFL. They're the Goldberg, the Jade Cargill, the Oscar, what have you, of the XFL right now. Still undefeated. But with that being said, it's not all bad news for the XFL lately. I know I've been harsh about their ratings and everything, but their ratings are starting to go up a little bit. Granted, it's a bit because they had a couple games on ABC, and they're moving some games back to ESPN this week. You will take note of that. But this week they had their two games on ABC. Arlington versus San Antonio averaged 750,000 viewers, and Orlando versus Seattle averaged 1.047 million. So they averaged over 1 million for the first time since week 1. Again, it was a game on ABC, but that was the premiere, the inaugural game of the XFL 3.0. And they finally back cracking a million views. But it shows that really at times the network does depend on who's tuning in and who can access it. But let's get into the offensive player of the week. Speaking of St. Louis, we'll get into that later. But speaking of St. Louis, and I know I'm about to make KJ with all of this that I'm about to say right now, but AJ McCarron is my offensive player of the week. That quarterback for the Battlehawks had not only the best game for the week for quarterbacks, he had the best game of his season so far in the XFL. He threw for 236 yards, 3 TDs, and still added 18 rushing yards on top of that. That man showed again why initially the first couple weeks, and I think he was my first initial offensive player of the week, shows you right there of what he can really do, and he's probably the best quarterback right now when it comes to the XFL. I will say as a pocket passing quarterback. Granted, I just mentioned him having rushing yards, but you know what I mean. But not to be outdone, my defensive player of the week, Lavert Hill, Defensive back for the Battlehawks. The ball hawk and Battlehawks defenses leading the league in every statistical stat of from tackles with 266 to fumble recoveries with 8. They lead the league in interceptions with 6. And Lavert had 2 interceptions on the game. Like I said, of that Battlehawks defense is quietly creeping up. And like I said, they've established themselves as one of the premier defenses in the league. And when you can throw up 2 interceptions on or get 2 interceptions in one game, I think you're doing a hell of a job on defense. But let's take a look at the standings because we did have the shakeups. You know, we had one undefeated team toppled. So we'll take a look at that. But we've got the DC Defenders, again, still leading the XFL North at 6-0. Still the only undefeated team, just being dominant so far. Then we've got the Battlehawks and the Sea Dragons, both tied at 4-2. That's going to be a tight race, I feel. That's going to be an interesting back and forth between those two teams. Granted, I might be pulling for the Battlehawks just because, you know, that rivalry between them and the Defenders, I think, is the best thing the XFL's got going right now. And then bringing up the rear, we have the Vegas Vipers at 1-5. And then we've got the Houston Roughnecks still in charge of the XFL South. And then we've got the Arlington Renegades at 3-3, the San Antonio Brahmas at 2-4. Again, both just very middle of the pack teams. Just they don't know who they are. That's really what it is. They don't know what type of offense they want to run, what type of defensive scheme they want to run. I think they're just out there slanging it. But then still we have the only remaining winless team, and we might have to pop a little bit of the bubbly if and when the Orlando Guardians pick up a win this season, but they are at 0-6 so far. But now that we've got the standings out of the way, let's get what really matters, my power rankings. This is where I'm taking every team from worst to first and seeing where I think they really stand. If we just had this as one whole league instead of conferences, divisions, what have you. But the Orlando Guardians easily coming in at number 8, like I just said. They are 0-0, and they've had a quarterback accused of selling plays, which it turns out he just told his friend on another team, on the Brahmas actually, that he was inactive that day. That's all that happened. But this team has just looked like the welcome mat for the league every game that they've played. Vegas in at number 7. Hard to really pick a team that's going to be at number 7. That's, you know, only got, or hard not to, I should say, that's only got one win. And they just traded their quarterback, Luis Perez, to the Renegades. So already we're seeing the writing on the wall. They're 1-5 right now. They just traded their potentially or was starting quarterback. So I don't know if it's going to get any better here for the Vipers. But speaking of the Renegades, we've got them at number 6. I think last week I had them at number 5, but really like them and the Brahmas right there at 5. You could very much just flip-flop both those teams. If I gave it the Brahmas the slight edge because they picked the win up on the Renegades, even though the Renegades have the better record. But both of these teams have had moments to where they've looked really good, and then they've had moments to where they just look lost out there. But we've got the Seattle Sea Dragons at number 4. I know I keep bigging them up. I said that they were a sleeper team. They were number 3, I think, on the power rankings last week. So a little bit of a slide, but I think they started off at number 7. So very much still a team that you need to watch for and team that you need to account for. But I do have them sliding to number 4 because of the performance from the St. Louis Battlehawks. Like I said, they had a player win offensive and defensive player of the week with me. So they do got to slide up. They've been towards the top of this pack, top of this ranking the whole time that the league's been going. So they're going to be a team to watch out for. I wish, honestly, that we could get them versus the Defenders in a championship game just because the intensity that both those teams have. I mean, Christ, we had the last game between them end in a fight. So, but number 2, the Houston Roughnecks. They've been sliding down. They just took the L from the Defenders. They faced the Battlehawks this week, so it's going to be interesting to see if they course correct, if they find the error of their ways, or if they start to just slide a little bit more. If they were the front runners for the league, and maybe they've now started to get figured out. But if you didn't know, now you know. Number one, clearly the DC Defenders, the best rushing attack in the XFL, one of the best defenses across the board. I know I said that I'd probably give the top defense to St. Louis, but just a insane, incredible rushing attack, and probably have the second best quarterback in the XFL, depending on how you feel about Danuch. I mean, he didn't have a great game, but Jordan Teamu is a stud, not only throwing the ball, but rushing the ball, and they work that two quarterback system kind of option tandem. But the only undefeated team in the league, 100%, they've got to be top of the power rankings. But let's get you into the week 7 games, get you your preview for the games going on, so you can tune in between there when, before WrestleMania or during WrestleMania or the pre-show for WrestleMania, all of that. You can have it up on multiple screens, all that. But the first game we've got kicking off, and see, this is where I said I was going to let you know that I'm recording this on a Friday, so you can make fun of me if I'm wrong here. But I'm taking Seattle to beat Arlington. That game kicks off at 7 p.m. This Friday to later today for me on FX. But again, like I said with Arlington, and I hate to keep beating a dead horse here, but I don't think they know what they are as a team. They're 500 football right now. They just traded for Luis Perez. Maybe they'll make that work. But I don't know, going against Danuch and Josh Gordon and Ellington, sorry. The Seattle Sea Dragons are going to be a team to deal with come playoff time, I feel. But then we've got San Antonio versus the Vegas Vipers. That's kicking off April 1st. Happy Fool's Day. Happy WrestleMania Day. Happy Saturday at 3 p.m. on ESPN2. So like I said, if you want to catch that, if you want to have that in the background where you're here listening to us when we're doing a marathon stream covering Stand and Deliver, and all the way through WrestleMania Night 1, we got games, we got trivia, we got prizes, all of that. But maybe I'll try and convince KJ to take a peek at that as well. But we've got that game going on at 3 p.m. on ESPN2. Like I said, I'm going to take the Brahmas on this. And it's not, Vegas still only has one win. They just traded their quote-unquote starting quarterbacks. That means Tyler Huntley is going to now, I guess, be their starting quarterback, who has not looked that much more impressive than Brett Hundley. Messing all the names, then Luis Perez. But that tells you how much it's been a rotation and a sliding door at the quarterback position for them. So I'm taking San Antonio. If they haven't played great football, they're sitting at 2-4, but that's still one more win than the Vegas Vipers. So I'm taking the Brahmas. And then we've got the DC Defenders versus the punching bag that is the Orlando Guardians. Kicking off again on 4/1 on WrestleMania Day at 6 p.m. on ESPN. And I think that I'm glad that they're getting the Defenders on ESPN. More people need to know about the beer snake. But it's clearly got to be the Defenders here. I almost want to set an over-under of how many points the Defenders will score. I'll go 30 points for the line of, if you think that the Defenders are going to score under 30 points, let me know in the comments below. If you think that they're going to score over 30 points in this game, let me know in the comments below. But this is going to be stomping a mud hole and walking it dry. Stomping a beer snake and walking it dry in the Orlando Guardians, I feel. And then we've got, wrapping up the XFL Week 7, we've got the St. Louis Battlehawks taking on the Houston Roughnecks. There we go. And again, I think that that's going to be a great matchup. I think that's going to be a back and forth game. That's going to be another stellar game. There's really 3 to 4 teams that are the top teams in this league. It's always great to see 2 of them really battle it out, especially when this feels like, who's Prince of the XFL. We already know the Kings are the DC Defenders, but who's going to be second place team here between the Roughnecks and the Battlehawks? And with that one, I'm going to take the Battlehawks. I like I said, they've got probably the best defense. They do, at least statistically, when it comes to the XFL. And they've got one of, if not the best pocket passing, the best passing quarterback when it comes to the XFL. So I think the Battlehawks are starting to right the ship, while maybe the Roughnecks are starting to kind of get exposed and figured out, and maybe might need to start thinking about course correcting. But that does it for your week recap, folks, for the XFL. I will remind you, we are the Wrestling for Life Network. I am Big Nick. Happy WrestleMania week. Happy WrestleMania weekend. Happy WrestleMania day. If you're watching this live when this goes out, stay tuned. Just stick around right after Hangout. We're going to be right back here for your pre-show for Stand and Deliver, here for Stand and Deliver. And then we're going to be rolling right through. Like I said, we got trivia, we got games, we got, podcasts, we got guests, we got interviews, we got anything and everything you can think of, I feel, when it comes to WrestleMania coverage. And then we're rolling right through for WrestleMania Night 1. And it's going to be crazy because we're in Hollywood, baby. But that does it for me. That does it for the XFL Week in Review. Be a friend, tell a friend, like, share, and subscribe. And I will catch you all on the flip side. Peace.